when England toured India in the winter of 1951-52 during the Madras Test. King George passed away during the first day of the Test match. The next day was rescheduled as the rest day, and so the cricketers took field in black armbands the day after, and Elizabeth became the next monarch. She's still there, and this was also the first Test match India won. So basically, I won't say Elizabeth became queen that year, but Elizabeth has been the only queen. Would have been the heir when India won their first Test match, and she is still there. She is still the queen when India won recently in Lords. Then a few months later, India toured England again. This was Fred Truman's series. It was a 4-test series. India lost 3 Test matches very badly. Rain saved them in the 4th Test. But Fred Truman, I think he took 29 wickets in 4 Tests. These were his first Test match. So Truman was at the RAF base when they called him to inform that, okay, you have been picked for the Test series. And Truman thought this was a prank call. He didn't believe that he had been called for the Test side. So he called to ask the caller to bugger off, not to bother him. This does not sound very well from me. He said it's Yorkshire accent, and I'm sure that he might have added a word or two to this. So his senior fast bowler at Yorkshire, Bill Bowis, had to call him to convince him, and this is not a hoax, this is not a prank, you've actually been selected. And then he applied for leave, and his senior sanctioned leaves only after he promised match tickets to the commanding officer. So that was how Truman made his Test debut. I think he took 29 wickets in 4 Test matches, and in a little over a decade's time, he became the highest wicket taker in the world. I think 63-64. England were touring India, and ahead of the Bombay Test, the team was they basically reduced to a hospital. The England team, half the side was down with food poisoning. So there was a suggestion that Henry Blofield, who was covering the series for The Guardian, one of the very few available English citizens around, there were suggestions that Blofield might have to make his Test debut over there. So I think that might have, Blofield actually was quite pumped up. Okay, this is my chance. And but I think that might have been a good idea, because what happened was Mickey Stewart basically came out of the hospital bed the next morning. He announced himself fit. They had to include Stewart. Okay, we now have 11 fit men, so Stewart plays. But by tea that day, he was back to the hospital. He didn't play in the Test match again, and he went straight back to England. So playing Blofield might have made more sense. England were so short of cricketers during that Test that India, Pataudi was the Indian captain, they had to lend Kripal Singh as a substitute fielder to England. Kripal Singh fielded for England. Then in 1967, Ajit Wadekar, he was not captain yet, he decided to troll Brian Johnston of the BBC Test match special. So the Indians were playing a tour match, and Johnson tried to interview Wadekar. This was late on the tour. Johnson was trying to interview Wadekar, and whatever Johnston asked, Wadekar kept responding to everything with no English. And Johnston obviously became frustrated. Ajit, you have been talking to me throughout this tour in English. How could you forget English? What do you mean no English? So Wadekar said, no English, only Hindi. And that was it. He didn't give the interview. So 4 years later he would win a series there. There was more than sense of humor, but I think his sense of troll. He had a wicked sense of humor. In 1972-73, I think it was in the Kanpur test. So Tony Greig appealed for an LBW decision against Sunil Gavaskar. Now the umpire was Madhav Ghotoskar. He ruled Gavaskar not out. And Gavaskar decided to, troll Tony Greig. He said Ghotoskar was his name, he was Gavaskar and that was Ghotoskar. He told Tony Greig that Ghotoskar was his uncle. So now England captain Tony Lewis took this very seriously. He asked Ghotoskar, and now Ghotoskar had to convince Tony Lewis that okay, this was a joke, he was not being serious. So that was one match. And then I think in the next test match was in Bombay, and there Vishwanath got 100. Now Tony Greig, he was 6'5", he cradled Vishwanath like a baby and sang a lullaby. He actually took him in his arms, in his lap, I don't know how to explain it, and sang a lullaby on the ground. So Greig became very popular with the crowd. And now then Greig scored 100. Greig was 6'5", and so now Vishwanath had decided that he would take revenge. So he had Gavaskar in the plan. So what happened was 6'5" Greig and 5'5" Gavaskar and 5'5" Vishwanath were tried to cradle Tony Greig, but they failed to lift Greig off the ground. It was only logical that they would fail, but yes, that was what happened. So very peculiar things used to happen at one point on cricket grounds. 1974, Mike Hendrick, who recently passed away, made his debut in that match. This was also Madan Lal's debut, and there was a very peculiar dismissal during this test match. So what happened was, Hendrick bowled one to hit the off stump. It beat Madan Lal, it hit the off stump. Then it knocked the outside off stump out of the ground, and then it kept moving with the wind. It brushed the middle stump, and then it hit the leg stump and knocked out the leg stump. So when Madan Lal turned around, what he saw was the middle stump standing on the ground and the off stump and leg stump on the floor. So I don't know what he felt, but it must have been bizarre.